Hey, let me buy you a drink.
Get cancer, jerkwad.
I have cancer.
I had to do another intro, so welcome to my video. Today we're going to be talking about one of the best shows I have ever watched, BoJack Horseman. This video is going to take more of a serious, more inline tone with what I'm talking about the show. But I hope you enjoy the video, and don't forget to like and subscribe because I am very tired, and I also want to go back and watch Black Hole videos because that girl, bro, oh my god.
Fresh about the kitchen to the check. Blue quarter key on the set.
Okay, let's get into it. BoJack season 1, explained by a 19-year-old. I swear the video has a very different tone from this. So if you hear things change, it's not me, it's the video. So enjoy the video. So we dive into the first episode of BoJack Horseman. And what we really get from the first episode isn't really that much of anything. We are introduced to BoJack himself. And we get to see that as a character, he's one person who's never accepted to grow from his fame. He became famous in the 90s for doing a show called Horsing Around. And once he grew into that fame, he never moved on from it. Always wanting to cling on to the fact that he was in a show back then, and for now that he's nothing to people and people don't see him as important or as famous as he was before, he always wanted to cling on to the fact that he was in a show back in the 90s and it did well. Sitting down and actually re-watching his own show multiple times and drinking and just trying as much as possible to never accept that maybe right now he's not as important as he thinks he was or he is.
Oh God, I'm a failure.
Oh, you're not a failure.
The first episode isn't really, it shows us a person who's flawed. A person who doesn't want to grow. A person who's, it's a person who's stunted. He doesn't want to grow. He doesn't want to see anything past what he became. And it's very, very compelling for him as a character. Because through this, we're shown that this show isn't really what you think of as just another cartoon on TV. And now we actually get to see a side of the show that kind of shows us on how serious it could be if well internalized. Diving into the second episode. The second episode is such a weird episode, and I am saying this because there's literally more of nothing that really goes on here. BoJack gets in a feud about arguing over muffins with a Navy SEAL, and it's an actual SEAL. But apart from that, like, I think what we take from that incident, even though it's really stupid and it shows us how the media would rather focus on things that are this irrelevant than actual problems. The smallest thing I could take away from this episode, it kind of shows us on how BoJack has this need to assert that he's always right. And this thing makes him actually fight with the world for no reason. And I wouldn't say he's fighting with the world, but he's constantly creating problems just to make up that he's the one who's right and everyone around him is wrong. And the best takeaway I make from this is that BoJack, with the way he acts and the way he does things in this episode, is more or less showing us that BoJack is the worst enemy on himself. That's what I take out from this episode.
You know what the problem is with everybody? They all just want to hear what they already believe. No one ever wants to hear the truth.
Why don't you touch my prickly muffin?
The most important thing is you gotta give the people what they want. Even if it kills you. Even if it empties you out until there's nothing left to empty. No matter what happens, no matter how much it hurts. You don't stop dancing, and you don't stop smiling, and you give those people what they want.
After rewatching that episode, I can say that this episode was a really interesting episode, to say the least, because BoJack gets to reconnect with his former co-star Sarah Lynn, and when they get to reconnect, we see that Sarah Lynn is at a stage in her life that feels a little bit too much to handle, and at such a young age she kind of fell into drugs and just went on surviving like that because she didn't know what to do. And BoJack, who was sort of a father figure to her when they were together back in Horsing Around, he wasn't really playing that father figure role in the best way possible. I mean, he would do it because of the script, but after that, he really disconnected himself from Sarah Lynn and didn't help her navigate how fame can change a person. And in this episode, now that he gets the chance to do that, he takes her in and wants to be that father that he wasn't in the past. And what we get to see is that BoJack by himself just wants the gratification that he wants to tell himself that he helped someone, and that's what he wants to stand by. But it really doesn't go that way, because Sarah Lynn just uses BoJack's freedom to do whatever she wants. She throws a party, they actually make out. This is just not cool. And the episode ends in a really funny place, where we get to see that as much as BoJack wants that space where he wants to tell himself that he's helping people and he's doing the right thing, being the best version of himself, he's so disillusioned by how he perceives things that he'd rather have things go through like a sitcom type of life where everything ends happy and everyone's happy. And now that he gets to face the reality that he's just doing all this for his own gratification and not to actually help Sarah Lynn, the episode ends in a really sad note, and BoJack by himself just sits there and of course tries to again disillusion the fact that he was wrong, and tries to say that he was right and everyone else was wrong.
I didn't do anything wrong because I can't do anything wrong. Because we're all just products of our environment, bouncing around like marbles in the game of Hungry Hungry Hippos that is our random and cruel universe.
So, yeah, that's my best takeaway from this episode.
We learned a lot and had some laughs, but they couldn't make us sledge. No!
On to the fourth episode of BoJack Horseman. And this episode is particularly amazing. It's particularly really interesting, with the heading Zoes and Zeldas. And the Zoes of the group are people who are optimistic, while the Zeldas of the group are people who are pessimistic, as it's mentioned or tried and shown in the episode, where Todd gets a grand opportunity where he gets to have a rock opera. And at first, BoJack seems interested in what he's doing. He seems like he actually wants to help, but once he sees that Todd will actually succeed from this and leave him and go, BoJack gets very jealous of this and actually meticulously makes a plan all through just to make sure that Todd never leaves him and he stays around with him. And BoJack's behavior in this episode is clearly very problematic. You can see that this person is really not a good friend. He's a person who wants to say that he's right by his own claims. He wants to force that he's right all the time. He literally did that by saying that he's helping him. We don't get to see it. We don't get to experience that he's helping him because he seems genuine at first, and then he does that and makes sure that Todd never leaves. And you can tell that by this episode, BoJack is a person who struggles with his own self, by the dynamic of having to be alone. He never wants to be alone. He always wants to have someone there and claim that he's helping that person even if that person is not going anywhere. He's a person who clearly doesn't really care about any other person's motives. He wants his own success. My honest takeaway from the fourth episode is that BoJack really needs to work on accepting that people have their own lives to live. In this case, Todd should have gone through the rock opera. It should have helped him. It should have been happy for him. It should have moved on. But he really didn't want to do that just because he didn't want to feel lonely. And by not overcoming that issue, BoJack literally destroys Todd's career and makes him stay around. And I wouldn't say that's a good behavior to have, you know? And by that, the fourth episode, as interesting as it is, we get to see a man who's so insecure and a person who's so lonely that he's willing to take away everything that another person has just to make sure they stay around.
Thanks for your help, character actress Margot Martindale.
I don't feel good about what we did here, BoJack.
I don't know what you're talking about. This never happened.
In the fifth episode, we get to explore Diane's backstory, and her story reveals a very messy and dysfunctional family that BoJack necessarily didn't expect. And Diane's complicated life changes BoJack's view on her, and he realizes that everyone has their own struggles, often hidden from view. In this episode, it really hints at BoJack's potential for empathy, though he's still really self-centered. I mean, he never changes. Every single episode, he never changes. But in this particular episode, he gets a very big potential for empathy, and Diane's struggles remind him that he's not the only one dealing with pain. And this lesson, he comes to slowly learn it as the series does develop. And when he gets to see how much Diane's been trying to deal with the problems that the family throw at her, it's a very, very, very interesting episode, because the family is just, they're not supportive at all. They had a time that they planned a pen pal just to embarrass Diane. And again, with the whole dad situation, they had her take care of it. Every single thing. She plans a funeral, no one shows up. She has to dispose the body, and everyone is there. And she gets this moment that she just crashes out, and I think she does deserve that moment. She truly does deserve that moment, because her family has not been supportive, and they have been like a really big group of assholes just letting her try and survive with how bad they've been treating her. So this episode does show us a very, very different view of Diane. Even though she seems planned and active and all that, she does have a very dark hidden past. And we have a moment where BoJack doesn't act like a stupid fuck for the first time in a really long time.
Dear Diane, it's me, your old pen pal Leo. This definitely isn't BoJack Horseman writing this.
And this episode gets to open up a new perspective for BoJack and how he's been seeing Diane, and the relationship really grows from there. So the fifth episode, as much as it has a lot to do with Diane's story, it does open up a good place for hers and BoJack's relationship. Episode 6. I don't really know where to begin with this episode, because they do two things. We go through two things that were particularly funny in the episode, but the main one was that BoJack has feelings for Diane.
Look, I need to get rid of this before Diane sees it.
Why do you care if Diane... Oh, fish. Are you in love with your biographer?
What?
And would do anything to make sure he gets to keep Diane for himself. Even stole a D off the Hollywood sign. Like, this sixth episode, and on Todd's side, he gets in prison, is involved with gang stuff, and now has to choose between having one gang or the other gang. It's very weird. Like, this episode was particularly just interesting to experience and to see, and I literally have no takeaway. I have nothing from this. It's just pure jealousy from BoJack trying to take Diane from Mr. Peanut Butter, and Todd having weird gang stuff in prison, and that's it. Literally, that's just it. Yeah. And we are done with part 1 of season 1 of BoJack Horseman, and I will see you in probably a week, or if you're watching when both videos are out, just click on this other video, and yeah, I will see you there. So goodbye, bye bye bye. And I only got one question for you.
Did you pray today? Did you pray today? I get down on some gangster